How's it going, everyone? I am Dylan. This is All You Can Board, and this is the best board games for couples or for dating. Now, back in 2021, I believe it was, I did a video that was the top 5 board games for first dates. This is sort of like a spiritual follow-up to that, but this time also encompassing, not just if you're going on first dates, or just dates in general, but if you have a significant other, a partner that, whether that's a long-term, short-term, you're looking for board games to play together, this will give you a bunch of ideas. So I know what you're thinking. You're probably like, I'm clicking on a video that's best board games for couples, and it's a guy by himself telling me which board games to buy. I'm going to pull from my personal experience, that is from my long-term relationships that I've had, my short-term relationships, the dates that I've been on the last couple of years, and if you want a full breakdown of my entire dating history, you can subscribe to Patreon. No, I'm just kidding. That is not a Patreon exclusive video, but you should subscribe to Patreon if you are looking for a way to support us. The link will be in the description. We don't mention that a lot in our videos, but I figured I'd throw it out here to make sense with that really, really bad joke I just did. So we're going to jump right into this. I'm doing this a little bit differently. I'm not ranking these board games. A lot of times we do top 10 lists, or many channels you'll obviously see in the board game space and just in entertainment space in general that are like top lists. This is going to be pulling from our buyer's guide that we do every single year, where I've come up with 10 categories, or I should say myself and Braden, because a lot of these were actually Braden's ideas, these categories. They are going to be categorized under these categories. So it'll be a category. Some of them are, having a little bit of fun with the naming of them and just like what they're encompassing. Other ones will be a little bit more straightforward, but within these categories, I'm going to suggest some games that you can buy if your significant other fits into, some of these categories and what they entail, or your group, fits into the category you think it could be for you. So let's jump right in. The very first category is going to be for double dates. So when you're looking for a board game that's not just for you and one other person, but you're actually looking to do a double date, what board game should you play? And the one I'm going to recommend is Pictures. So Pictures is a wonderful game to play with 4 people. It plays up to 5, and really it shines the most, I would say, at 4 or 5. But I find that I have played this in a double date scenario at 4, and I thought that was sort of the sweet spot, and that's the best game of Pictures that I've personally had so far. So Pictures, if you don't know what it is, very simple game. You're going to have a bunch of images out on the board. They're going to be actual real life images, kind of abstract, kind of random, and everyone's going to be given a different art tool is what I'll call it. So you might get shoelaces, you might get wooden blocks, you might get little colored cubes that have to fit into this 3x3 picture frame. For instance, you might get rocks and stones. I'm forgetting what the last one is now. Oh, it's just cards with different images on them. So every single round, these are going to pass around so that you're always using a different item to create one of these pictures that's in the center of the table. And you're going to know which picture to create because you're pulling a little cardboard piece out of a bag that'll say like A4 or C2. And you're going to look at the grid without anyone noticing what you're looking at. You're going to try to not make it obvious. And you're going to have to create this image. And everyone else is going to have to try to guess what you've created. And you're going to get points for how close you get. It's just a really fun, relaxing game, easy to teach. And it leads to a whole lot of laughter on the table because everyone's just having fun and being as creative as they possibly can. And I just find that creativity is one of those things that in a dating environment, especially when you have multiple people there because it's a double date, bigger dynamic, this will kind of encompass a lot of different personalities, and everyone will just have fun with it. So that is Pictures, and this is one of those games that extends beyond double dates. So if you're also looking for a game to play on double dates, but also kind of owning your collection that you can play with other groups as well, Pictures is a great one. It won the Spiel des Jahres, which is Board Game of the Year of Germany, if you're unfamiliar, and it won it for a reason. It is a really, really solid game. I bring it out, it's not a game that hits the table a lot, but when it does, it's always a winner. That is Pictures. Next up is for impressing your date or partner. So this one is when this isn't impressing necessarily, well, it might impress, you might impress them with you in terms of your ability to pick board games, but more this is for when you want to impress your date with the actual game you're playing to the point where maybe they didn't understand that board games could encompass something that is that creative or that unique, and maybe this is also a way for you to get them to play some more board games more often. So this is actually one of the ones I think it's the only one I don't have physically here because I don't own it. I'm trying to get my own copy of it, Braden does own this, and that is Lacuna. So Lacuna I've played a few times in this past month in January, and it is such a wonderful game. So the premise of this game is it comes in this, the only problem I have with this game is it comes in this cylindrical tube, which when you have a whole bunch of board games that fit into, square shelves and they're all boxes, for some reason I just want every single one of my board games to be the same kind of shape and dimensions, and having to fit I'm getting too, you can tell I'm very passionate about this. Lacuna is a game for 2 players that you're gonna have this cloth in the center of the table, and every single game you're gonna shake up this tube. The box itself acts as one of the board game components. And there's going to be these little wooden pieces of 6 different colors inside. You're going to shake them out randomly all over the cloth, and it is supposed to be random. And all you're going to do is you're going to just kind of, if they end up touching right up against each other, or they're too close to each other, you're just going to kind of spread them out a little bit to make sure that there's enough of a gap between the pieces. And then everyone is going to have these golden and silver pieces. I should say one player is going to have silver, one player is going to have gold. And you are just taking these on your turn, and you're placing them between 2 wooden pieces of the same color. It doesn't matter how far away they are, as long as there's nothing obstructing the line between them, you're going to place one of your tokens in between that line that connects 2 colored pieces anywhere along that connection. You are then going to take the colors that it's between, and you now own those, and you're going to keep doing this back and forth. Now the idea is, out of the, I said 6 colors, I actually believe it's 7. Out of the 7 colors, you want to end up with having the majority of them where you have the most of the color. So out of the 7, whoever has at least 4 where they have the most of that color, they're going to win the game. And so yes, you're capturing the colors just by placing your gold and silver tokens or pieces, but at the end of the game, you're going to also get any of the ones that you're closest to from any of your pieces that you've placed. So you're also not only just claiming the ones you've put down, you're also keeping in mind whatever you're near, and you have to look at what your opponent's getting close to and try to find places where you can steal some from them at the end of the game. And it comes with a handy ruler that you can measure if things get too close, and you can't tell just by eyeballing it. But the idea here is that it's a really quick playing game. There's tons of strategy. It looks beautiful on the table. It's one where you don't just play one game of Lacuna very often. It's like a best of 3, best of 5, best of 7 because it goes so quick, and it's addictive. It is really fun. I've always wanted to play it more and more every time I've tried it again. I want to have it in my collection immediately because of how good it is, and it will impress because even when we played, there was a local board game convention here in Winnipeg that we went to recently, myself, Braden, and Carlo, and we played Lacuna, myself and Carlo, and we had people, there's tons of board games being played here, and we played other games and had no one really stop and admire what we were doing. And 3 or 4 people in a row that walked by stopped to watch what we were doing because of how eye-catching it was and how interesting this game looked. So it is one that will impress your significant other, especially if you're looking to try to explain to them that not every board game is just Monopoly or Scrabble. There's a little bit more depth here. I think Lacuna is going to be a great choice for that. Next up, we have for the conflict adverse. So I have had many situations where you are wanting to play board games on a date or with a significant other, and the one thing that they are not looking for is something where it's going to be very competitive. Not everyone is a competitive person, and even if you are a competitive person, sometimes, especially on a potential first date, or with your significant other, where maybe you're not looking to get into conflict with them, you want something that's just perhaps you working together, maybe a co-op game would be the right choice for you. And so I'm going to recommend my favorite 2-player co-op game. I think I said that really boldly, and I'd have to think about that, but at 2 players I think it might be my favorite cooperative board game, and that is Codenames Duet. So I've talked about this game a lot. This is my preferred version of Codenames, and it's not that the party game version isn't great, it's just that there are a lot of great party games out there, and Codenames, for me, the original, doesn't hit the table nearly as much, whereas Codenames Duet does a lot because of how much I think it excels as a 2-player game. So if you're familiar with Codenames, it's basically that in a cooperative 2-player format, and if you're not, essentially all it is going to be is there's going to be 25 words in the middle of the table, and you are going to get this little key that I see one side and my teammate sees the other side. And we're each trying to guide each other to guess certain words on the table. And the only way you can get people to guess these words is by giving a single word clue with a number at the end. The number at the end is going to dictate how many of the words your clue is associated with. So for instance, really simple, if there was 5 animals out there and all 5 on your key were things that you had to guide someone to, which is probably not gonna happen. I've never had a situation that great. But if all 5 were something that you had to guide them to, you could could say animal 5, and now you would be associating that clue with 5 different words on the table, and they'd have to try to suss out what you're trying to guide them to. It's never quite that easy, and you're having to find really random connections to tie words together, because you can't just keep saying something one, something one. You'll never win the game that way, and if you're trying to win, you're going to have to get a little bit more creative and have things that encompass 2 or 3 different clues and find ways to connect them. The reason I really like this as a couples game and also a first date game is, as a first date game, you're working pretty hard together to try to connect these words, and there's a lot of hilarity in trying to, like, you're learning about the person, and you don't have a lot of to go off of in terms of like inside jokes you can pull from. So it makes the game more challenging in that way, but there's just a lot of eye contact. There's a lot of connection in terms of playing a board, because you're looking at them as they say certain clues or trying to figure out their clue. You're waiting for them. There's a lot of like downtime in a good way, where you're kind of like seeing the gears turning in their head and starting to learn how they come up with clues and how creative they are. Whereas if you play this with someone you have a long-time rapport with, you can start pulling from inside jokes and things that only the two of you would know, and you might do better at the game because of that. And even longer term, there is sort of this mini campaign mode in the game where you can travel to different places on a map, and you have a harder goal in each location on the map of how many clues you're trying to solve in order to win at this location. It's a really loose campaign game. I was even hesitant to call it a campaign because it's like the loosest form of that, but it is a way to extend the length of the game and to have a little bit more fun if it's one that you're playing over and over again. So that is Codenames Duet for the Conflict Adverse. All right, next up, this one is this is called For When You Want to Get Physical, and get your head out of the gutter. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm obviously talking about sex. Okay, but what I'm actually talking about are games that specifically have physical components that I think are really sort of adding to the experience of the game, or encompass, and this I should say, this is going to be the category that has 2 games. I'm recommending 2 games here because I couldn't choose, but essentially either the physical components are a big reason why this game is so much fun to play, or just like so much fun to get to the table, or there's an actual physical thing you are doing in the game that isn't just like playing cards or whatever. Like there's this physical component that I'm really explaining this poorly, but essentially the physicality of the board game is part of the experience. That's how I'm going to lay it out. So there's 2 games I'm going to recommend here. The first one you might be expecting, because I think this one, the physical components on it make it very eye-catching every time I play this, and my favorite player count for this is at 2, and that is Santorini. I talk a lot about this game on the channel, so does Carlo, so does Braden. We all love this game. So Santorini it can play up to 4. I think that I always consider this a strictly 2-player game, and it does have these physical components there, these plastic pieces where you're building these structures that are going to be capped at this blue topper, and it's an abstract chess-like game where you're having to try to get one of your characters to the top of one of the towers, and as soon as you do that, you win the game. Everyone's going to have these god powers which really make the game shine, and the god powers are going to break the rules of the game. Sometimes you'll have alternate win conditions. Sometimes you'll be able to do things you'd think when you read the ability that sounds broken, and your opponents might have an ability like that too, and there's a lot that comes from using the god powers. You can play without them, but I think it's a much better game with them, much better game with them. And the way it looks when you actually have the full game having been played and all the towers are up, it's super eye-catching. It's super fun to build the towers. It's one that's going to get you and the person you're playing with engaged, not engaged to be wed. I mean, maybe. If you get engaged to be wed playing Santorini, let me know. But it's going to get you engaged with the actual emotions and what you're doing on the table. I played this at first dates, and it's been a success, although I personally shouldn't be playing this on first dates, because I've played so much Santorini that if I don't choose to not try my hardest, then I found that I just win handedly, and then that's not maybe the funnest thing for the person I'm on first date with. So maybe not for me, but if you haven't played it and or you've only played it a few times, and the person you're on the date with hasn't played it as well, great game to play in that sense. Also for couples, this is one where I could see doing best of 3s, best of 5s, best of 7s, kind of always getting to the table and and both getting good at it and wanting to see all the god powers, and constantly, you know, if you're both really good at it, having wins that you're trading back and forth and getting really competitive with it. So it's a fun game to get to the table. It's a fun game to play, and it looks gorgeous. So the physical components on this are great. That's why it fits into the Let's Get Physical category. My next recommendation for this category, because I'm breaking rules, because I choose to, and we're gonna pick 2 games for this one, is a newer game, and it is called Fit to Print. So this one is fitting to this category because it is a real-time live action game where the physical components themselves aren't, I mean, they're great. The artwork is really gorgeous in this game, but they're nothing that is going, like, you're not going to write home about the components of this and how amazing they are. But the actual action, with it being all real time, is going to have you reaching and looking at tiles and placing them in real time, and it's really, really frantic. So the physicality that both players are going to have, or all the players are going to have when you're playing this, is going to be something that's really memorable and something that is a part of the experience. So this isn't just a 2-player game. This does play up to, I believe it's 6, I want to say. Yeah, it is 6. You can even play it solo in case you get into an argument with your significant other, but you really want to play Fit to Print. But I've played it at 2 with Carlo a bunch. That we had the prototype copy when this was on crowdfunding. Carlo and I played it. We really enjoyed it too. I think it is actually a really, really good 2-player game that just happens to also encompass more players and be good at those player counts as well. So if you're looking for something where there's more physicality involved, you're getting a little bit active with your board games, a little bit physical with your board games, but it still doesn't demand a lot of rules overhead, and it's something that people can grasp that are, you know, at all spectrums of where they land as a board gamer. I think Fit to Print is a really solid choice, and it's a really beautiful artwork, really cute. And I think it's one that people will just enjoy seeing on the table and then asked to play again. And again, it's another one where it plays really, really quickly, and you can even play like shorter versions or longer versions of it, and so you might want to play multiple games of Fit to Print, and it won't take you very long to do so. So that is Fit to Print, and Centering and Fit to Print are my Let's Get Physical. I shouldn't have done the body shake. That was a bad choice. I regret it immediately. Those are my Let's Get Physical picks. All right, next category is called For Putting It All Out There, and this one is a very specific, fun category where if you are on, this is more in line to, I would say, a date game, but this can work with couples as well. And that is, if you want to just find out, you're putting it all out there, is the person I'm on a date with or in a relationship with going to get into board games in a bigger way? And so I don't mean we're going to throw down, you know, the brass Birmingham here and see if the other person enjoys this or doesn't. I'm talking about like sort of a next level step up, and one that in this choice I'm making now is. It also has to do with the fact that the artwork is kind of bland. I think the game's amazing, but the artwork's very bland. So you really have to get them, 1, over the hurdle of this isn't going to be a pretty game, and 2, over the hurdle of this is going to be a little bit more complex than the rules teach and in the strategy department. But if you want to put it all out there and just see what kind of board gamer this person is or is interested in being, this is my pick, and that is Castles of Burgundy. You like that little pop down? You probably didn't think I was going to pick Castles of Burgundy because it was on the shelf. See, I did a little trick there. So Castles of Burgundy is my pick here because it is my favorite 2-player game. It is, I think. I played it all player counts. I love it at all player counts, but I do think it shines the most at 2 players, especially if you want to get competitive with it. But I think just in general, it's better as a 2-player game. But this really is another sort of step up. There's a lot of strategy involved. I don't personally think the rules are all that complicated, but I also play a lot of board games, and so I know that if you're trying to introduce board games to someone who doesn't play a ton or is familiar with ones with less rule overhead and not as complicated, not as complex, it can feel like a lot going on, and even just in terms of like what you can do on your turn and what you should do on your turn, it can feel a little bit overwhelming. So it is the next step up, and the artwork is not going to be the thing that pulls them in. That this is not going to be Wingspan where they're just like, yeah, I'll learn this game because it looks beautiful. You're not going to be able to get away with that. So this is when you want to just put it all out there. If they're into Castles of Burgundy, if they love this experience, there's a whole gamut, a whole world of board games you can start to show them because you know that you've just kind of cracked through a barrier with them. So, and maybe what you want to do on the first date is be like, I don't want to date someone who is not going to play Castles of Burgundy with me. So if you're going to put it all out there, bring it to the table. If after 2 rounds they're super bored, keep on looking, keep on swiping on the apps, whatever you need to do. So Castle of Burgundy, if you don't know, also is one of my favorite board games, so I'm kind of a little bit biased in the pick. But all it is you're going to be rolling 2 dice on your turn. Those numbers are going to let you take actions. So you're going to have a board full of numbers that correspond to the numbers on that die, and you can either there's also going to be depots of tiles on a main board that associate to different numbers on the die. So with a die face, you can buy a tile from one of the depots, or you can place one that you've put in your reserve. There's a little reserve that you buy into, and you can place those from the reserve onto your board. They all have different abilities or ways of scoring points. You're going to do a lot of comboing here. That's my favorite part of the game, is sort of analyzing the board. What should I buy? What can I combo into? How can I get the most out of my dice? There's workers you can get to sort of make it not as luck-based, where it's just like, oh, I didn't roll a 2, so I can't place this. If you have workers, you can change a die face by -1 or +1, or you can use multiple workers to change it by more. There's a lot of yellow tiles that are all different abilities, and sometimes we'll just circumvent different rules of the game or give you more things. I love Castle of Burgundy, so again, my bias is showing a little bit here, but I really do think that if you're looking to find out, is the person I'm with or is the person I'm dating or seeing or whatever the case may be, interested in playing sort of board games of a certain skill level or ones that are a little bit more complicated, I think Castle of Burgundy is a good pick, because it's not you're not selling them on. I think if you introduce someone to Wingspan or Everdell, you might think, oh, I've cracked that next level with them that can introduce more board games to them. But the theme is doing a lot of the heavy lifting there, and they might only be interested in games that are tableau builders, or worker placement games, in those specific instances, because the games are so cute and because the games are so lovely to look at on the table. This is going to be one where there's no heavy lifting done by the artwork. It looks bland as shit. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. So if they're into Castles of Burgundy, you got a whole wide world you can introduce them to. So that's my pick for when you just want to put it all out there. All right, next up we have for win, you just need a chill vibe. You're not looking for any sort of conflict on the table. You're not looking for anything too much rules overhead. Maybe you just want to put on some music, have a glass of wine, and just kind of do. I'm gonna use a phrase that we just coined here at All You Can Board, which are mumble games. This is I would say borderline mumble game. Like maybe there's not gonna be a lot of mumbling here, but we call them mumble games because they're games where everyone is sort of doing their own thing. There is maybe some a small amount of player interaction, but everyone has their own board, and so we call them mumble games because everyone often is like, well, okay, I'll just do this, and I'll take this here, and you're not really telling your opponent what you're doing. It's because it's going to impact their choices. You're more just announcing it so they know that you're not cheating, and when you get to a point where you trust each other, a lot of that is either done silently or through mumbling, and that's why we call them mumble games. So my pick for this category, when you just want chill vibes and something to kind of each have your own activity but playing together, is a game that I've talked about a few times, and that's called Fife. So Fife does play up to 5, but I actually think that 2 is a really, really solid count for Fife. I'm not ready to say it's my favorite player count for Fife, but it is a really good one. And this is sort of one that it hits a few different notes. It's one, it allows everyone to have their own activity. It's going to feel really chill that way. But 2, there is some puzzly and thinky elements in terms of where you're going to put your scoring conditions. So on the edge of the board, you have to slot in what that row or column or diagonal row. Is that what it is? It's a row, column, and diagonal. Is that what it is, or is it a diagonal row or diagonal column? Anyways. You have to choose where you're going to slot your scoring conditions into. So wherever you slot a scoring condition, that row, column, or diagonal is going to score for that condition. And so your board is going to look different every single game you play, depending where you put these scoring conditions. There is player interaction in terms of who finishes it first, but I would say that that's minor. You're not really doing a lot of take that mechanics. You're not really doing anything super mean. It is mostly chill. It is mostly mumbly, but you're going to be placing these colored little circle tokens that are actually really, really nice quality, really fun to kind of play with. And they're going to have 1 to 5 colors, 1 to 5 numbers, and 1 to 5 images on them. And so all those different things score in different ways depending on what the scoring condition is. They might have to be ascending or descending, or have 1 of every color or 1 of every number. There's a whole different bunch of them, and you're sort of just slotting them in. You're always going to have 2 in your reserve that to choose from. You're pulling new ones from the bag. There's special powers in terms of these shell abilities that you can use as needed. You don't get a whole bunch of them. If you don't use them, you get bonus points at the end of the game. So it's not super low on the rules. rules explanation. There is some rules to explain, but it's honestly not that complicated. Really nice to look at on the table, really fun to play with the components, and it is gonna fit that chill vibe you're going for. Put on some music, have some wine, play some fife, and consider this foreplay if you want. This is board game foreplay. That's what I should have called this category. It's board game foreplay. Okay, that is fife, and that was my pick for this category. Okay, next up we have got for when you want eye contact. Now, I've made this its own category because sometimes, and it's great coming out of the board game foreplay reference there. Sometimes you want a game that's going to make you feel connected with the person, right? You want to do an activity that is, yes, we're playing a game together, and that is going to bring connection, but how can we add connection to that? And I think eye contact is always something that's going to add connection. And I've talked about this game a few times on the channel, and specifically about the eye contact itself, and so I'm really, really excited to talk about even some more. The Mind. So The Mind, if it can stand up, it can stand up, is a really simple card game. It does play up to 4, and it's good at all player counts, but I've played the most at 2. And it can be, it's not like this is only good as a date or a game for couples. I've played this many times with friends at 2, 3, and 4, and it is just as good in those situations as well. But if you were looking for, really understanding the nuances of someone's personality and establishing a lot of that through a lot of eye contact, The Mind is great because it is played in silence. And now you would think, as a game for dates or couples, that having to be restricted to not talking might not be the best. One, you don't have to, even though you have to follow that rule within the confines of the game, you can talk about non-game stuff as you're playing. That's really up for you to decide. But 2, arguably, without talking, there is more connection here because you still have to really be looking at your opponent and trying to figure out what they're thinking. Because the idea is you have a hand of cards from 1 to 100. And sorry, you're going to have a hand, you start with just 1 card in your hand, round 2 is 2 cards, round 3 is 3 cards, but it's a possible deck of 1 to 100. And you have to play these from lowest to highest in the middle of the table without talking, taking turns without knowing what your opponent or your teammate has in their hand. And so when you get to, it's easy when you only have 1 card in your hand, or easier, but when you have 5 cards in your hand, if we can't communicate, and I play an 8 into the table because it was an early number and I felt safe with that, and I go to start playing another card, and at the same time my teammate goes to play another card, and we both hesitate, how do we figure out who has the next card in sequence to play after an 8? The only way that you can figure that out is by getting in tune with their playing style. How quickly do they react when someone plays something? How much do they hesitate for a number that's 10 away compared to a number that's 30 away? You learn, every player will play the mind differently, and so you're really learning about the player at the table, but this happens through a lot of eye contact because you're not talking. And often when you're getting to these moments of, should I play? Should I wait for my opponent to play? All you can really do is bite your lip. Bite your lip because you're struggling with the decision. But hey, biting your lip because you're playing a couples game, that works too. And just look at the other person and try to discern by looking at their eyes and be like, what are you thinking? And so you just get a lot of eye contact. It can be a really good date game, and it can be a really good couples game. And it's great because then when you have a double date or just some friends come over, it's a game you can play up to 4, and it's still really, really good every time. So that is The Mind. I love it. I've had it for a long time in my collection. I will never stop recommending it. All right. Next category, really important category, really vital for dates and for couples alike, and that is for when your partner likes Fjords. So I'm sure we've all had this situation before where you go on a date or you're dating someone, you find out they're just really passionate about Fjords, and you're like, and now you're a board gamer and you're like, what game do I possibly introduce to this partner of mine or this date of mine who loves Fjords? I got the perfect game for you, and it's called Fjords. Fjords is great for when your partner loves. Okay, I'm gonna stop this charade. I made this category just because I wanted to talk about Fjords, and I thought that would be a fun way to do it. Fjords, this new version, this is a remake of a game called Fjords that came out a long time ago, I think in the 90s. It was out of print. This is the reprint that they did out of it, and they did new artwork and everything. This now plays up to 4, and it actually plays really good with 3 and 4. But there's a classic variant in the instructions for the original 2-player game, and I still prefer it the most as a 2-player game. I think it is such a great game, and it's a 2-phase game where you are just alternating turns playing tiles and creating your map essentially. So it's like, imagine you're creating the playing space, you're creating the board. You have to match terrain types, so either grass to grass, mountain to mountain, water to water, and it makes more sense when you actually see the tiles that there are these 3 hex tiles. And you have to line them up so that you always are connecting things so that you don't have like grass connected to water or anything like that. So you're creating this board, but as you're creating them, every time you place a tile, you have the option to place one of your little huts. I don't know if that's the official name, but I'm calling them huts right now. One of your buildings. Yeah, I think you have 5 or 4. I can't remember exactly now how many each player gets in the 2-player version. But you're putting these out if you want at the end of each of your turn when you place a tile. So you're going to do that for the entire first phase. In the second phase, starting from the huts you placed, you are going to now put out your Vikings. So you're if you're playing the original Fjords, you're putting out these little circular discs. We're just going to call them Vikings here. So you're putting out your Vikings. You have to start from one of your huts, and whoever has placed the most Vikings is going to win the game. So it's an area majority game where every tile can, unless it's all mountain or something, as long as there's some grass on it, can house one Viking. But you have to start from your huts, and so it's this game going back and forth of, okay, both of us can play on this piece. So if I play there first, I'm blocking them, but if I play there, they're going to play one over here on their turn and block me because the turns just alternate. So you're just trying to establish as much control as you can within the confines of the map that you've created in the first phase of the game. It is a really, really fun game. I love playing Fjords. I love that it plays so well now, 3 and 4. So this is another one of those games that if you get the new version, this is going to shine even when you have, you're playing beyond just games with your date or your significant other, but is going to shine when you play with them as well as a 2-player game. So for when your partner loves Fjords, I recommend Fjords. That's also a callback if you are new to the channel. We did a April Fool's video a couple years ago where we changed all our branding to, my phone was doing something there. We changed all our branding to all you can Fjord instead of all you can board. And we announced that we were changing focus and everything like that. So it's on our channel. If you want to go back and check it out, we did our top Fjord board games of all time. So a little callback for all the AYCB faithful. All right. For when you secretly want revenge. Now, this sounds a little bit meaner than maybe you're expecting, but the way I phrase this category is, this is going to be less, maybe not at all, for first dates. If you go into first date wanting revenge, just stop dating for a while. This is more when maybe you've been living with someone for a while, you've been married for a while, and there's things that they're just bugging you. They're just bugging you with things they're doing around the house. Maybe they're not doing the dishes. Maybe they're not taking out the garbage. Maybe instead of taking out the garbage, they're just like bagging a time, putting it by the door, but they're not just taking it outside. Maybe there's little things like that that are bugging you. And you need a safe space to enact some revenge and just to really, really knock them down a peg. But you want to do it in a nice way, one that's not going to cause arguments. What's a game that is unassuming, looks beautiful, looks gorgeous, is really fun to play, but can just be mean as hell? So that and especially if you're good at it and they're just okay at it, that you can just rip them apart. Well, I've got the game for you. It's called Azul. So Azul is a super popular game, and so it's going to be easy to convince them that you just want to play a game that you heard was great, or that everyone else that you know is playing, or is just it looks beautiful on the table and makes you hungry because all the pieces look like Starburst and candy. But 2-player Azul can be super, super mean, because you can easily force situations where your opponent has to take a bunch of tiles they don't want. They can't fit them on their board. They have to take negative points for them all. So if you've never played Azul, this is a tile placement game where you're going to have a bunch of these little, I can't remember what they're called now, but there's these little circle depots or whatever. They're not called depots. I'm forgetting the actual term, but they're all going to have 4 tiles on them. You have to choose one of them, take all the tiles of a single color that are on there. So if it's just one of 4 different tiles, you have to just take one. If there's 3 reds on there and you want to take red, you have to take all 3. Whatever you don't take goes to the middle, and you have to take the ones that you've selected, put them on the left into these different rows that can house 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tiles. If you ever fill up one of those rows, at the end of the round, you're going to slide one over into your main board. You're going to score. I'm not going to get into the whole scoring thing. The scoring is honestly the hardest thing to explain to a new player in Azul. For some reason, I found, even though it's not super complex, it's always something that's just really hard to wrap your mind around the first time you play Azul. But it's very unassuming because it can be very, very mean. It doesn't have to be, especially if both players aren't looking to be competitive. But if you really, really want some revenge on your significant other for some stuff they're not doing around the house or something, take out Azul, especially if you're good at it, and you can just really crush them and let out all that steam, let out all that emotion. That's my recommendation for when you just want a little bit of, fun revenge, playful revenge with your significant other. Azul. I'm not going to talk anymore about Azul because Azul I've talked a lot about on the channel. A lot of people know about it, but I thought it was a really solid pick for this category. Okay, last category. This is for long-term commitment. So this is essentially the category for campaign style games or legacy style games. So these are games that you're in a long-term relationship and you want to have something you can play with them that is going to extend multiple plays, multiple months, maybe even a year total, playing the same game because you're coming back to it because it's a campaign game, it's a legacy game. It plays out over multiple sessions, multiple games with the same contents that's in the box. So I'm gonna have a couple recommendations. Technically I'm gonna have 3 recommendations, but 2 are essentially the same game. You'll understand in a bit. But my first recommendation here is one that I actually played with my significant other at the time when I was in a long-term relationship. We're not together anymore, but we played this over the course of a year. And it's funny because the game itself, in the story of the game, plays it over the course of a full calendar year, January to December. That is Pandemic Legacy Season 1. So this actually has 3 versions. There's Season 1, Season 2, and Season 0. I've only played Season 1. The good thing about this is 1, it's cooperative. So you don't have to work, you're not playing against each other every time you play this. You're working together over the course of multiple game sessions. 2, Pandemic is a really popular board game. There's a good chance they've either already played it or already heard of it. And it's really not that complicated to teach either, so easy to get into. And then 3, this one has a lot of evolving formats. You're gonna be making permanent changes to the board. You're gonna have story elements that happen that change the rules of the game almost every single session. Losing isn't, the end of the world. It doesn't feel really bad because you are going to lose some games, but the game goes on and you get a chance every single month you lose to try to win for that month. So you can play up to 2 sessions for each month, which means that you technically play like 24 sessions, I think, maybe is the max. I don't quote me on that because I can't remember. It's been a while since I played this version, so maybe that it is less. But regardless, we played it for a very long time. It was tons of fun and just one that was sort of an easy go-to as, oh, we want to play a board game. Are we going to play something that we're learning for the first time, or something new, something old, whatever. This is one that there's an ongoing story, so it's something we know that's going to feel new and feel fresh. So perfect for the long-term commitments. That is Pandemic Legacy Season 1. But I wanted a recommendation that is even lighter and easier and more accessible than this, but encompasses the same philosophy, the campaign, the legacy style board game. And so I don't have it here with me, at least one of the versions, but the other one I'm gonna recommend is My City. So My City, I played the entire campaign with Carlo. Braden played the entire campaign with his wife. And so I'm pulling more from Braden's experience, obviously, here, but it is a really light, really accessible, really easy campaign style game that plays over 24 sessions, I want to say, for the full board game. But even if that feels too inaccessible or it's too much space on your shelf or rules overhead or whatever, there's even another version, which is My City Roll and Build, which plays over less sessions. I think it's 12 maybe, and it's a roll and write version, My City, that is a lot of the same DNA, but even more accessible. So between My City or My City Roll and Build, if you're looking for something you can play with a significant other, over multiple sessions, and that I almost guarantee you they're gonna like, because it's really easy and really addictive. I think My City is a really good alternative to Pandemic Legacy Season 1, which is a little bit more involved. So Pandemic Legacy Season 1, My City or My City Roll and Build, all great choices for this category. That is it. Those are all my recommendations for if you are looking for a first date game, if you're looking for a date or a game to play with your boyfriend, with your girlfriend, with your partner, your significant other, your wife, your husband, whoever they are, that special someone is in your life. If you're looking for board games to play, these are some recommendations for you. Let me know if any of these are ones you end up picking up, and if you play it with someone special in your life and they happen to resonate, I'd love to hear that you got that recommendation from me and it worked out. Or if you have any other suggestions that I didn't name here, because there's a lot of games I haven't played that you might have been expecting to be on this list. Like for instance, like Fog of Love comes up a lot as a date game. I just haven't played that, so I couldn't recommend it. But if you have any other ones that you think would be great for the categories I listed here, or just in general you want to recommend, throw them in the comments. I'm sure other people will see them and love to get some other recommendations. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. See you next time.